Hi, I'm Dr Ananian-Welsh. I'm a senior lecturer here at UQ Law School. I've been researching press freedom and national security for the last few years, and I'm joined today by Sarah Kendall, who is a PhD candidate here at the law school. Her PhD is on evidence law in the context of domestic violence.
So Beck, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been researching?
So I started out as a constitutional lawyer, and my first job was at the Attorney General's Department in Canberra. And there I realised that all parts of the Australian government and the Australian people matter in constitutional law, but what really mattered to the Attorney General's Department was the media. First thing we would do when we got to work was check the Media Monitor's report. And I didn't really get a chance to research that or incorporate that into my research until 2018, when I was approached by Professor Peter Grester and asked to start looking at the intersection between national security and press freedom. So since then, with you helping us, we've been looking at how law, but particularly national security law, impacts the capacity of the press to do its job, particularly its democratic role as the fourth estate.
Why is this important? Why is it important to look at this?
So there's a lot of reasons I could give for why it's important. Free speech, democracy, Australia's right to know. But I think it really came to a head last June when over 2 days the Australian Federal Police raided first the home of Annika Smethurst and then the ABC's Sydney headquarters. That was the point when Australia, I think, realised, and the world, that press freedom, the capacity for the press to do its job, was really under threat, and that national security law could be used to silence the press through whistleblowers or simply prosecuting journalists.
Right, and so what have you found so far with some of the national security laws?
So Australia has more national security law than anywhere else. The last count was about 82 separate pieces of counter-terrorism legislation introduced since September 11, 2001. So our first job was to map all of those for their impact on press freedom. And what we found was that those laws really do pose a threat to press freedom, and they do that by being a vehicle through which you can prosecute journalists, so potentially criminalising legitimate journalism. And you have done fantastic work for us on the espionage front, because the espionage laws were one that journalists were saying to us, we're worried about this, and we looked at it and we said, yes, you probably should be worried about this. The other way that the press freedom is threatened is through source protection. So whistleblower protections and the capacity to prosecute people for speaking to journalists, even if they're revealing misconduct, even if they're revealing information that's in the public interest.
What other legislation or areas of law have you found that press freedom is really having an impact?
So there's a lot. There were the ones that we knew were going to be an issue, or we were pretty confident, like espionage and secrecy. But then when the AFP raids happened, we realised that the entire scheme of warrant issuing in this country needed review because it was impacting press freedom. And there's 40 plus different kinds of warrants that can be issued in Australia. So that was something else that we've looked at. And that came to the fore in the 2 parliamentary inquiries that were convened after the AFP raids. One before the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, the PJCIS, and the other before the Senate Committees on Environment and Communications. So we were able to make submissions based on, by that stage, a year of research on warrants and national security and press freedom to feed into both of those inquiries. But the Parliamentary Joint Committee has just reported, and it has 16 different recommendations across so many different areas of law: whistleblowers, shield laws, freedom of information, the list goes on and on. And our advocacy and submissions played a central role in that report, which was really heartening to see that we could inform policy, but also that even the Intelligence Committee of Parliament recognised that this is a really big issue and there are a lot of problems for press freedom in this country.